Welcome back, everyone. I trust you had a good lunch. For those just joining us online, I just want to recap the conversation that we had before lunch. Just to let you know, we had a strong and robust conversation in relationship to data ownership and related issues. What we've done over the lunch break period is to try and pull this conversation together into a set of summary slides to share with you online. Now, as we go through this, the guys in the room, please chip into the conversation. It's aimed at clarifying some of the discussion points we had beforehand, but please chip in and add to the discussion. So we're talking about the ownership of your database, and this is a summary of a discussion of issues around ownership. Let's start off with a couple of key concepts. If you remember, we're not asking you to post personal data. We don't sell you your data. The question is, who owns my contacts? Where you put entries into the address book for your account, you own and are responsible for those contacts. A name like John Doe may be entered into the address book multiple times because John Doe has multiple relationships with multiple people. Okay, so far. Who uses my contacts? You use your contacts. It's up to you to take advantage of your contacts to raise funds, engage them, and to do all of those sorts of things. Again, let's come back to our John Doe. John Doe has a relationship with 3 organizations, 3 people, 3 businesses. So 9 people may have John Doe as a contact in their address book. So if you like, they're all using your contact because remember, you don't have sole ownership of anybody. Okay, so far? We'll talk about the difference between accounts and address books in a moment. Are your contacts secure? Yes, as we've talked about before. Only you get to use your contacts. We've talked about database security. We've talked about server security. We've talked about policies and procedures and all of those sorts of things. So, in response to the question, have I surrendered my contacts to valued communities? Who was it who asked that question? Yeah, I see there's a big smile on your face. And who was the person that was... Yeah, over here. Yep. Just so that the guys online know, there's 2 guys in the room and they had quite a strong conversation before lunch. You went off and had a coffee and you're best of friends? Great. Do you want to answer this bit as to whether your mate has surrendered his contact to value communities or not? Okay, you want me to do it. The answer is no, you haven't surrendered your contacts to us. You still own them. You are still in control of the contact details. You can add them, delete them, modify them, and all of those sorts of things. But the point to remember is that your contact has multiple relationships. So like your friend is friends with lots of other people, it's exactly the same here. And remember, the user opts in for services and for information they receive, including yours. You're responsible for management of your spam. Now, I want to talk about this in a little bit more and what happens with a contact in your address book and the difference between that and when they create an account and become a user of the service. So let's look at this slide. We have our contact Gene. So if there's a real Gene out there in the world somewhere, I apologize for misuse of your name, but let's use her here. Jean is an individual. She may be a member of Organisation 1, and Organisation 1 may put Jean in their address book, the same as Organisation 2. Business 1 may also have Jean in their address book and lobby her from both an advertising point of view and to come and support your organisation. And likewise, Jean has many friends. So she is also in the address book of Individual 1. And with Organisation 1, there's a group associated with it, and Jean may be in that address book as well. The point is this: Jean lives in multiple communities with many interests that she may want to support. So, an organisation does not, or a business or an individual, does not have exclusivity over Jean. Now, the question then becomes, who got Jean to create an account? Because the organisation can't create accounts on her behalf, a group can't, a business can't. The only person that can create an account for themselves is Jean. So, what bit of advertising, or what bit of marketing, or what bit of lobbying, what campaigning, what message, what text message finally got Jean to create an account? Good question. Now, just because Organisation 1 believes that Jean is their contact, and Jean is now on the platform and taking advantage of that to support her other interests, does Organisation 1 have any claim to Jean? And this was a point of a robust conversation. I see some smiles in the room. So not only is the concept a little bit archaic, even if you accept the concept, then you need to prove it. And because the person that brought Jean to the table is now benefiting in multiple ways, how does that all get equalized out? And at the end of the day, if an organisation or a group is saying, I brought Jean to the table and I've encouraged her to use your service, well, that happens all the time. You encourage your supporters to list on social networking. By asking for card payments, for payment of membership, you encourage your members to get a card. So this is happening all of the time. The question then becomes this: if you think that you're being hard done by because of this, that's entirely your call. You benefit through being engaged. You benefit through being engaged in the wider community. And there was the two people over here were having this conversation. You're actually having this conversation over lunch, weren't you? And what was it you said to your mate? Okay, if you want to live on an island, that's entirely your choice. This service is not for you. But, as you pointed out, there's lots and lots of benefits. And by the way, you address these issues all the time in the real world, and many times it's not a problem. So let's go back a slide. Yep, so this is the one. We've touched on some of these points. So the fundamental point is this: you are not diluting your database and your supporters by using the platform and the service. So as we discussed before, and with the slide we just looked at, you're bringing your contacts, you're getting them to list, and now they're supporting other organizations. The answer is yes, that may happen. It may not. We don't know how many other organisations they're going to support. We don't know how many times they're going to support them. We don't know for how long they're going to support them. Okay? The reality is this. They already do this in the real world because they live in multiple communities. Jean may get 6 letters a month asking her to contribute to different things in her community. It's already happening. Remember, you are still gaining. Now, if you're not gaining from the service, then there's 2 choices. One is close your account. That's fine. Or put some effort in and actually do it. And as we talked about this in the session this morning, as long as an organization lists and as long as somebody loves them and are using the service, funds will arrive back at the organization's bank account. If the organization is proactive, then they will get more. Another point. So organization 2 comes to the table with Jean as a contact. Was Jean already using our platform and our service? How do we prove all this? How do we manage all of this? And again, was it you that got Jean to list? Now, the other one to remember is this, is that, okay, you came to the platform, you got Jean to list, and Jean is now using the service. What about John Jean? John Jean was already on the platform using the service and is now supporting you. Jean has had a conversation with John outside of the platform, and now they're working together to support your organization. So there's an element of practicality to all of this. Now, what we allow you to do is this. You control your database. We store it for you. You can use it, and you can take advantage of your contacts for the benefit of you, your interests, and your organization. It's up to you to work the database of your contacts. And as we talked about before, we're giving you both the passive collection approach plus the proactive engagement. So, it's your choice as to what you do, but what you remember is you don't own, as an organization or a business, an individual. They are choosing to support multiple interests. So we're back to the slide that we just talked about. Moving on from there, the thrust of the conversation was, I bring my contacts, I get them to list, and now businesses are advertising to my contacts, and what am I getting out of it? Well, remember this, the businesses are in your community, and they're often supporting you as a group and an organization. Now, for a minute, let's park all of the previous conversation that we've just had, and let's assume that the first statement is correct. You are still gaining from those businesses through prizes, sponsorships, by them raising funds for you, by their family members coming in and supporting your organization. So, if you're going to take the island view, that's okay, it's entirely your call. But as you know, we all benefit through a mutually supportive system. Now, remember, Value Communities is giving back to you and your communities through its advertising. Remember, we said where we can, we try and put money back into the aggregated fund to top it up, especially from advertising. And remember, everything that we are doing is totally transparent and clear to everybody. They have elected to opt in to this because they're benefiting from it. Contrast this with many other activities whereby your information is exploited, sold off, and all of those sorts of things that you know all too well, with profits going back to a small bunch of people rather than coming back in directly to grassroots. Think about that one. For the guys online, that was a hearty topic of conversation in the morning session. Now, let's look at it from this point of view. So, we're saying, I brought Gene to the table. What am I getting for it? Well, let's look at this slide. So, we have a parent organisation. So let's say this is swimming, and let's pick the US. So the parent organisation for swimming in the US brings to the table itself and all the organisations underneath it, which is organisation 1 and 2 in this slide, and all of the groups underneath them, and bring to the table their membership contacts, and they put them into the address book. Remember that you can't make them individuals registered using the service. The individual has to elect to do that themselves. Organisation A, a totally separate organisation, brings itself and some of its groups to the table, and there's an individual over here. Now, Gene is in this entire pool of contact details and memberships. Gene is in the address book of multiple groups, multiple organisations, multiple individuals. Whether she has an account or not, this is the conversation we're having before, you're all marketing and engaging and seeking funds from Gene. And Gene is deciding who she wants to engage with, who she wants to support, and whether she wants to be a member or not. And Gene has multiple interests. She's in multiple address books, and she is connected to multiple groups and or organizations. Now, what happens is this. You as an organization that claim ownership of Gene, you gain through her directly, through your offline marketing and everything else, and through their involvement in the service and the platform. Okay? And remember, Gene is already supporting multiple interests. We know that as a society and individuals, we gain through a mutually supportive system rather than being isolated. This is why we have families of all sorts of different types. This is why we form groups of all sorts of different types and flavours. And this is why when we get into disputes, we form alliances and all of those sorts of things. We do all this already. This is what happens. Now, for the person that was quite strong about this point, about them bringing Gene and all of their contacts to the table and everything, what they were getting from it, in the robust exchange of views and conversation before lunch, some of the points made were, okay, you brought Gene to the table. Show me that she's spending less on you because of the platform, value, communities, VCAhha, and the service. Show us. Okay, it's hard to do. Now, if you're gaining through having Gene use the service, what's the issue? And that was the gist of the conversation we had. So, what is the value of Gene to you, both through the platform and standalone? That's a choice an organisation makes, and it's entirely their call. Now, part of the conversation before lunch was also that I've brought Gene to the table. She's using the platform. What am I getting back as the organisation? There were some very strong views expressed in the room around all the features and benefits which we've covered elsewhere. And who were the two people that were discussing? Yes, two ladies over here. And do you mind if I recite your words for the guys online? You're good with that. The gist of the words were, in the real world, you go off and get Gene to support you through other mechanisms already. For example, you only accept credit card payments. Gene wants to support you. Gene has to go off and get a credit card. And you get nothing for that at the moment. Now, you're listed with a lot of social networking sites. We all know the business model of some social networking sites. So you're already getting not much back from the social networking site. You're getting Gene to pay for a higher price in terms of privacy, paying more for services. She's getting less back for what she uses, just so that Gene can use that social networking site to engage with you, and that's okay and socially acceptable. So what's your point? If your point is that as an organization you're getting a bigger kickback from social networking site A for bringing Gene to the table, great, good on you. Does Gene know that? Is that transparent to everybody else? When we had this conversation before lunch, there was some big pauses and some very strong views expressed. So let me summarize. If a organization or a group, whatever it is, wants to claim sole ownership of Gene, that's not the case. If they are saying that they're bringing Gene to the service, but they're not getting anything for it, well, that's okay. Go close your account, because obviously the service isn't working for you. If you're gaining as part of a mutual beneficial system, why should somebody gain at the expense of Gene? They shouldn't. And if you look at what we can provide compared to many others, Gene is getting a much better deal by using our service than theirs. And it's common practice for a group or an organization to promote a service to its members with no direct return to that organization. It happens all the time. Does anybody in the room want to add to this, or do you want to take it up in the next coffee break? Okay, let's move on. The gist of the question was, so you've brought all your context to the table, value communities is exploiting the database. The answer to that is no. We are providing a fully transparent, fair exchange of value. You can talk about the social networking example we just did. We are doing it in a fully transparent, open way. We are providing a mechanism for funding with better returns than you get through other activities, and cheaper. Your contacts are entering into the service willingly. It is their choice. Remember, we talked about you may own the record in your address book, others don't get to use it and see it, but you don't own that individual, because that individual lives in multiple communities and has multiple interests. We talked about before how we add extra funds to the aggregated fund that we can, so the interest is going back to grassroots. We've talked at length about how we do not sell your data. We're not requesting you to post your personal data. And we've talked at length about how we do not monitor you like a lot of other social networking providers. It comes back down to individual choices. If, as an organization or a group, you're not happy and you feel more comfortable being a standalone island, that is entirely your call. Remember all of the advantages of being part of a system with everybody else. And the thing to remember is this, is that you do not own the individuals. You may have their contact details, you may utilize their contact details, but it's about individuals making the choices for the things that they're interested in and that they want to support. And it's about how they're doing this in a fully transparent, fully compliant, mutually supportive system. Okay, that took about 25 minutes. Does anybody in the room want to add to the conversation? And are there any other questions around it? Okay, great. What I would like to do is this. I'd now like to close this topic off and let's go through the next step about sponsorships and prizes and all those sorts of things again, and the engagement with businesses. And then at the end of that session, we'll come back to this and talk a little bit more about databases, the ownership of, and that sort of thing. And hopefully a little bit more of the picture will drop into place. For the guys joining us online, yes, we've already done business engagement, sponsorships and prizes. I'm now going to recap that in the light of this discussion and then come back to it again at the end if there's any more questions. Okay, let's all log in as our test business, and can this group over here, can you log in as the organizations to seek prizes, and we'll go from there. Thank you.